I think we have Dr. Terry Madonna with us this morning, Franklin and Marshall Pollster, political science professor, and all-round sought-after guy this morning, the day after the final day to vote. And that's what I have to call it now, Terry. You can't say the day after election because the election's still ongoing, right? Good morning, my friend.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There are at least 9 states that are still counting the ballots, and I think the attention will be on our state, Wisconsin and Michigan. The winner of those is going to get very close to 270 electoral votes, and there were some surprises. I think when you take a look at it, Trump won Florida. I don't think that's a big surprise. It was very close in the polls, as I kept saying. It was 1.5%.
Right.
And the same for Ohio. And we're just going to have to wait and see. And even in our state, where Biden trails Trump in the popular vote by something like
right now in our state, right now he's trailing 2,965,636 to 2,290,624 at this moment. That's with 64% of the vote in. Right.
Right. So the only question is there enough mail-in ballots to deliver a victory for Trump? And Philadelphia is going to be a main, because of the large number of votes in the Philadelphia suburbs. But I'll tell you, Trump did extraordinarily well in many counties. He didn't win by.
Yeah, were you surprised at all by like Bucks County, where Trump is now 54% in, but Trump's up like 14 points there, which kind of surprised me. And yet you look at Montgomery County, Biden's up by 18 right now, and then you get into Chester County, Trump is up by, that includes some rural area too, but Trump's up just barely there. And then you look at Delaware County, and Biden's up by close to 20 points over Trump right now as we head into today. So, but we have so many white places around Pennsylvania, white meaning they've not yet been counted, that, it's hard to get any kind of feeling for where Pennsylvania is right now.
Yeah, that's why I've been especially trying to be cautious because, early predictions are not good. And the other aspect of it is, Trump has promised legal challenges, correct?
All the way to the Supreme Court, he said, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to see how all that goes. I'd be surprised if we don't have them in our state. And again, until we get all the votes in, we are going to have to be careful. Biden is expected to win the mail-ins about 2.5 to 1, I think.
Right.
Is the numbers that I've been reading and analyzing. And the question is that enough to turn? Is that enough to turn it around? I mean,
let me ask you this question, Terry. This is really an important one. We got people said, well, the people that are going to vote for Trump are going to go up to the polls yesterday, and they did in droves. All right, we don't know what the final numbers are yet, but I think when we get them, they're going to be pretty much record. And then they said people who are going to vote for Biden are going to mail in votes. Well, we saw that. So what does that say about future elections coming up where people are going to say, well, why do I even want to go, walk up and walk in and vote? Is that something that's going to be kind of like Black Friday? It's fading out because you're online. Is that what we're kind of getting around to from your vantage point?
Well, I do think that we're mail-in voting is here to stay. There's no doubt about it. And, if they work out the technical aspects of it, how to get them counted and get them counted more quickly, I think that's the way of the future. And look at we know that there was a big increase in Gen Z and millennial voters. These are the people up to the mid-30s anyway, in terms of their age. And, lots of them voted by mail. I think that's probably the way of the future. I'm not suggesting that in-person voting will be completely eliminated, but I think mail-in's here to stay.
But you know what? The in-person voting now, what we're finding out this morning, if we look at a storyline this morning, the in-person voting doesn't mean squat until you count the mail-in ballots, which are just being counted today. And so when you start to do that, you say, well, election day doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of knowing the results on election night. So that dynamic has certainly changed. That paradigm is moving quickly, right?
Well, what they could do is what some other states have done, like Florida and a few others, where allow the counting, the processing of the ballots to take place earlier than Election Day. Florida had it 3 weeks before. I think you can set up the appropriate security, Gary.
Right.
And, have both parties represented, have, staff members do this and set up a secure place for that to happen. I think that's probably
and make sure the results don't get out ahead of time, which is all, the big fun in this country right now. But yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't see that yesterday. Did you?
No, I didn't at all.
That the results were put out early?
No, they weren't.
Some states, as I indicated, went much faster in terms of getting the ballots processed, and I think that's where the emphasis needs to be, because it's here to stay. There's no doubt about that.
Let me ask you in terms of, you watch polls and you watch exit polling a lot. I was watching the exit polling when I was standing in line to vote last night. I only had to stand for an hour and a half, so I normally I wouldn't stand in, I wouldn't stand an hour and a half to see me, but but when I was standing there, I was looking through the various exit polls on my phone, and I saw COVID-19, the economy, and healthcare as being the top ones. But then I started to read about people are a little tired of the cancel culture attitude in some of the states, and we're seeing that. Some of the people, blue-collar workers, didn't buy what Joe Biden was selling necessarily. Many of them were sticking with Trump. We saw up in the northern part of Ohio and over in Erie and some places like that where we're seeing some of that. So we started to see some other things, and I wonder what you were seeing in some of the exit polling. About 30 seconds left, and then we'll continue that on the other side of the segment. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm always a little leery of these immediate exit polls. I think we need to let it get the votes in before we, get too invested in early exit polls. I think they give us some general understanding of what's going on, but it's a little difficult to do when people are still voting and we have so much still up in the air. Now, I know they've interviewed people who voted. That doesn't mean it includes a sufficient sample to.
Right.
I'm not saying they're inaccurate. I'm just saying I think we'd probably be.
Yeah, I was reading trending stuff and what people were saying and so forth. And I agree with you that the immediacy of those, and especially with the number of mail-in ballots this year, that we don't have that kind of stuff on right now. It certainly is something we have to qualify. And Terry Madonna, the Franklin Marshall pollster, with us this morning. Terry, there was a sense by a lot of people, and you read a lot of the articles, you read the same stuff I do, and maybe even a lot more than I do, that this was kind of a foregone conclusion. Biden was going to win, period. That was it. It was going to be not necessarily a landslide, but it was going to be a decisive victory because people just didn't want Trump around anymore. That has not been the case. Biden may still win the election, I'm sure. That's a great possibility. But Trump now has a possibility of winning this election again, and, what happened? What went on here in the last couple of days or last couple of weeks to change that dynamic from your standpoint?
Well, what it looks like is that in the states, in the counties, if we take Pennsylvania, for example, that Trump won 4 years ago, he literally did much better than I think many people expected. Look what he did over in your county, the percentage of the vote that he got, and over here in Lancaster County. So, in other words, it didn't look like his vote fell off as much as a lot of the polls showed, and that's pretty important. I think the enthusiasm, and who knows, maybe these rallies that you covered and I covered and everybody covered, the enthusiasm, the large crowds, maybe they meant something. I'm not saying scientifically, but it could have been that the enthusiasm of the Trump people was really quite extensive. Now, I want to make quickly another point.
Okay.
If you go and you look at the results by county, you're going to notice how close the election is down ballot. What do I mean by that? I mean, if Trump is ahead in a county, let's say, by 60-40, look at down ballot. Look at the row offices, Attorney General, Auditor General, and State Treasurer.
Right.
they're literally within a couple of points at each other. I think we had a record number of straight party votes.
I agree with you.
Votes. And I talked about that for weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, there are races in our state where the Democrat is losing different, it depends on the election, losing, and it's consistent with how Biden is losing the very same county. Just take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. And the other thing is, it looks to me, and again, this is all qualified by we still have votes to count, but it looks to me like Trump's, depending on where you were, Trump's coattails were longer than maybe people thought they were. There was a sense also that a lot of people were distancing themselves from him, senators and representatives around the country. They might show up, or they might say something for him, but they weren't kind of hanging around too much with him when he came to town for a rally. But it looks like maybe the coattails were a little bit longer. There's not going to be maybe the big change in the Senate. The House looks like it's going to hold on to control. Maybe you can gain a few seats there, but there's not this massive blue wave that people were talking about. Am I wrong on that, or what's your thoughts?
No. I think you're right. I mean, the Republicans picked up, they won some Senate seats they were not expected to win. Now, they did lose McSally in Arizona and Gardner in Colorado, but several of the other Republicans won, and I think that comes as a surprise. I mean, if you go to Nate Silver 538 and Larry Sabato's crystal ball, I mean, all of the odds that they gave for Biden winning were like 1 in 80, 1 in 80%. You get 80% that he would win, and a little bit lower, but still very high that the Democrats would pick up the Senate, and that's still unresolved, but it looks better for the Republicans. Obviously, it did on Monday.
Our pollster's going to take
yesterday.
About 30 seconds left. You're in the business. Our pollster's going to take a beating here again on some of the prognostications ahead of time.
It could be. And in our state, Gary, you should see, we're talking about not just F&M, but Muhlenberg. We're talking about the New York Times, Siena College. We're talking about the Washington Post, ABC, Quinnipiac, Monmouth.
Right.
Some of the best polls in the country. And we were all consistent, 4, 5, 6, 7% for Biden. It's not that the lead was huge, but it was, in some
huge
cases
enough
outside the margin of error.
Yep. Hey, Terry, appreciate you taking the time this morning. I owe you a dinner, my friend, because I gave you the wrong time today. I got to say it publicly.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I do, because, I know you're busy, and I appreciate the day, and I appreciate you making time for us this morning. Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Dr. Terry Madonna, Franklin and Marshall Pollster here on WSBA Morning News with Gary Sutton.